everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Morgan Huntington. I am the admission coordinator for the College of Performing Arts here at Chapman. I'm also a Chapman alum. I graduated in 2018, so Chapman's very near and dear to my heart. And we'll be talking today all about how to apply for our performing arts programs and kind of what to look for when you're in those programs, researching and everything. So we'll go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so applying to arts programs, like I said, my name is Morgan Huntington. Again, I have a handful of my colleagues who are off camera who will be helping to answer questions in the Q&A chat throughout this presentation. So feel free to put your questions in there. And we'll also have a lot of time for questions after the presentation. So we'll get started now. All right, so we're going to start by talking about some different types of arts programs. So for starters, the difference between a BA degree and a BFA degree, for our music majors, a lot of times these are also Bachelor of Music degrees instead of BFA, but they're very similar. So our BA degrees are a lot fewer credits than our BFA degrees generally are. This means that usually you can have a little more flexibility if you want to add a second major or something like that. There's going to be less practical classes in your creative area. So you have more of a liberal arts education, but with an emphasis on whatever arts area it is that you're studying. Whereas a BFA degree is usually a lot more credits. You're going to have more practical classes, and it's going to be a lot trickier to double major, generally speaking, in one of those areas. And it'll be a little more performance heavy based. Okay, so now the difference between some different types of schools when you're looking into arts programs. So there are art schools that are really focused primarily on those art areas. These are going to be schools like Rhode Island School of Design, Otis College of Art and Design, Cal Arts. So these are really great programs if you're really wanting to be super heavily focused on your one art area. There's not usually GE classes, or if there are, they're pretty few. You're not really going to be studying any areas outside of those classes. It'll really be just within that one area. Then an example of more of a comprehensive school is what Chapman is, similar to Loyola Marymount, UCLA, NYU, something like that. It's a full liberal arts program so that you're still taking your GE classes and everything like that. But then you're taking all of your arts classes on top of it. One thing that's great about Chapman is that we have a conservatory style education in all of our arts programs, but they're part of a liberal arts school and as a whole. So you're still getting that experience of getting to take all of your GEs. You have an option to minor or to double major, depending on what you're studying, and getting kind of a more traditional college experience. So just depending sort of what you're looking for is a good way to know kind of what type of school you might be most interested in attending. Okay, so now choosing a major, I'm going to talk a little bit about the different majors that we offer here at Chapman. I'm sure a lot of you already have a good idea of what it is that you want to apply for, but just in case there's any confusion and to tell you a little bit more about them, I will go into them. So for our dance program, we have two majors. We have a BA in dance and a BFA in dance performance. This is one of our more unique areas because everyone enters as a BA in dance. So you don't need to make this decision right away. You can apply as a BA. Everyone starts as a BA, and then once you get to the end of your sophomore year, you decide if you want to audition for the BFA. So that audition is only open to our current dance majors. It usually ends up being around 50% or so of those students. And kind of like I was mentioning earlier, the students who choose to stick with the BA are generally those who have a second major. So that's usually where the kind of decision process comes. But generally speaking, you don't need to make that decision until later. So nothing to worry about when you're applying, but worth looking into when you're researching kind of the programs. Then in our music program, we have our BA in music. This is our general studies major. So you are still going to be auditioning for this major, but it's a little less performance based. You can kind of mold it to your own depending on what you're interested in, like music theory, music history. You can really make it your own. Then we have our performance degrees, our Bachelor of Music degrees in performance, composition, and then we also offer a program that gives you a pre-music education certificate. There is an option to partner with our education school and add one extra year. So you'll have 5 years total, and then you'll come out with a master's degree and a teaching certificate so that you're able to jump right into teaching after that. And this is really geared toward people who want to teach in like a K through 12 setting. then one thing to note for all of our music majors, no matter what it is, you're still going to have an audition element there. And then lastly, our theater program. So we have our BA in theater. This is a little bit more of the behind the scenes work. They have 4 emphases within the BA in theater. There is dramaturgy and literature, theater education, technical theater, and directing and performance. So those are kind of the areas that you'd be interested in if you're looking at our BA theater program. You don't need to choose your emphasis until you're a little bit into the program, but just good to have an idea of what you're interested in going into it. But you won't officially declare it until about your sophomore year as well. Then we have our BFA in theater performance. This is focused on stage acting. And then lastly, our BFA in screen acting, as the title states, is more focused on screen acting. This is a super unique program because it's shared between our College of Performing Arts and our Dodge College of Film and Media Arts. So you're getting to take classes about like the entertainment industry and the film industry in Dodge, and then you get to take classes with acting with our performing arts professors. And because of that, you get resources from both the schools. So a really cool, unique program for our students here. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can research schools, what to look for, and I'll talk a little bit about Chapman as well while we're going into this. But obviously facilities and resources are a super important thing. I want to mention really quick, we just opened our brand new Sandy Simon Center for Dance with our dance program. So if any of you haven't had the chance to come visit, definitely come. If you come for a live audition, they'll be held there. But we have 6 studio spaces, so that's opened up a lot more opportunities for our dancers, which is really great. We have a full training room there, so that kind of shows the emphasis on dancers' health that we have. So being able to research things like that is really helpful in looking at programs and seeing what kind of experience you'll have as a student, what you have access to as a student. Another great thing to look for, since a lot of you are performers here, is what kinds of stages and performance venues you'll be getting to work with. Chapman has an abundance of performance theaters, from small black box theaters up into our big Musco Center for the Arts, which is kind of our crown jewel here at Chapman. It's a really beautiful space. Again, if you haven't gotten to see it, definitely try to come see a show here. So getting to see what type of places you'll be able to perform in and work in. Hands-on experience is super important for us here at Chapman, and especially with a lot of these majors, that kind of goes hand in hand with performance opportunities. So what kind of performance opportunities are you going to be able to have? At Chapman, our College of Performing Arts is primarily an undergraduate institution, so you're not having to compete with graduate students for those performance opportunities. You get to start auditioning for shows your first semester at Chapman. So you get to jump right into that performance venue and get involvement in those. And even if you're not cast in a performance, you still have a lot of opportunities to work behind the scenes or anything like that, so that you're still really involved. So there's lots of ways that you can stay involved as soon as you start at Chapman and start getting that hands-on experience in these programs. Industry connections, it's super helpful to see what kind of master classes people offer. I posted a picture here of a masterclass we offered a few years ago with Kristen Chenoweth. Super cool opportunity. We had a collection of our performing arts students from all areas there who had a really great experience with her. So seeing what kind of things like that they offer, these are great ways to not only gain experience and practical knowledge with these people, but also make those connections for the industry. But it's also really helpful to see kind of where the faculty are coming from, what the alumni are up to get an idea if that aligns with what you want to do. So that kind of goes into my next point of career paths. You want to find an area that's going to align with whatever it is that you want to pursue. If you really want to study pop music, for instance, Chapman's really classical music based. So depending on that, it may depend what major you're looking into or what program you're looking at. If you want to be a ballet dancer, Chapman offers a variety of different dance outcomes. We have faculty from all different areas, so there's a lot of flexibility there in what you want to do, but just making sure that there are those resources and people you can kind of work with that will align with what your ultimate career goals are is super important. And with that career preparation, if we have a career advisor here dedicated to our College of Performing Arts. And again, for those screen acting majors who are shared in the film school, they'll also get to access our film school career advisor. So you get to work with them throughout your whole time in Chapman, as well as an alumni afterwards. So really helpful there. And then also having senior showcases and things like that, where you get to connect with the industry professionals and make a reel and show off your work so that you're prepared to go straight into this performing industry that can be a bit daunting at first, is really helpful. And then lastly, location. Is always really nice, especially in a lot of you who are interested in arts and entertainment areas. Chapman's really fortunate that we're about an hour from LA, so that opens up a lot of opportunities for our students to take classes, have internships, and things like that. So that's really helpful to know when you are looking for programs if you're interested in pursuing those kind of extra things. All right, and some questions to ask. So these are just some examples of things that you can ask different programs that you're looking at. Feel free to ask us or me any of these questions as well. Are there choreography opportunities at Chapman? As a dance major, you're able to start choreographing your sophomore year. Asking about study abroad, again, how well connected they are to the industry, seeing what their alumni are doing, what their faculty are doing. Again, like I mentioned before, performance opportunities. If you are interested in double majoring or having a minor, this is a super important question to ask. This really depends on the program if you're able to do that. So definitely, if that's something that's important to you, make sure you ask that ahead of time to see if there is flexibility to be able to do that. But yeah, here's just some examples. Again, jumping points to go off from. As an admissions representative, we love when you reach out with really specific questions that show you're really doing your research and really interested in our program. So it's great to hear what kind of questions you have about things like this. All right, so now, main reason you're all here, we're going to talk about the application process. So the first step to apply, Chapman is on the Common App system. So you're going to be submitting your Common App. Make sure that you mark whatever creative major you want as your primary major. A lot of you may be interested in double majoring. That's great. You can't add the second major until you're already a student at Chapman. So you can mark it as your secondary major interest, but make sure you apply for that talent major so that you're able to submit that creative supplement. If you don't, then you won't be able to submit all those materials, which will be a little tricky for you. A lot of our creative areas also are pretty challenging to transfer into once you're a Chapman student already. So just keep that in mind. You want to apply directly for it as a prospective applicant. So once you submit that Common App, within about 2 days, you'll receive an email that prompts you to do the creative supplement. So this is really where all of your creative materials for whatever talent area you're looking at will come into play. You'll get an email that links you to your student portal with Chapman, and you'll upload everything straight to there. So it'll walk you through all the instructions. Different programs have different requirements, but generally speaking, a lot of them are going to ask you for something like a goal statement. This is basically, why do you want to be in this program? Why do you think you'll be a good fit at Chapman? What are your goals in this industry? A resume that's specific to that area. Our theater majors as well as our dance majors submit a resume specifically of their work in those areas, just so we can get a glance at what kind of training you've had. Again, keeping this to about a 1-page, similar to a regular resume. It's just a quick way for our faculty to be able to see what type of work and training you've done. A headshot is required for some of our performance majors, again, in dance and theater. This does not need to be a professional headshot. It can be taken on your iPhone as long as we can see who you are. It's just a way for us to put a face to the name. And then some of our majors as well, especially in our music area, will require a scholarly essay. So this is going to be for our music education, our general music studies. And this is an essay that just demonstrates your writing ability. So it can be about absolutely anything. And it can just be an essay from an old class or anything like that. It's just a way for us to see a sample of your writing, since they are really writing heavy majors. So those are a lot of the areas that are going to be required in your creative supplement. Then after that, through the student portal, again, you'll be prompted to submit your media upload. So generally speaking, this is going to be your pre-screen audition videos. So for our dance majors, that's going to be either a 2-minute solo or 2 1-minute solos. So it's going to be 2 minutes regardless, but you can choose to separate it into 2 different pieces if you choose. We are primarily a modern ballet and jazz program. So ideally choosing an area that showcases one of those so that we can see your skills in balancing, musicality, floor work and things like that. If you're interested in kind of seeing more, we have a little bit more information on our website that goes into detail of what all we're looking for, and you'll see all of that when you go to submit the video as well. But if you are, for instance, a very strong tap dancer, hip hop dancer, something like that that you want to showcase, that's a great option to do that second video, so that you can showcase those two different types of dance. Then for our theater majors, this is going to be your monologues. So this is only for our BFA programs. Our BA theaters just submit a portfolio of all of their work, a collection of different work in theater that they've done. But for our BFA programs, they're going to be submitting 2 monologues. So if you're a BFA theater performance applicant, it's going to be a contemporary monologue. So that's 1950s to present, and a Shakespearean monologue. If you are applying for our screen acting major, it's going to be a comedic monologue and a dramatic monologue. And then one other piece that you require for our theater majors is a video called a wildcard video. So I get a lot of questions about this one. Usually it's a relatively new requirement of ours. This is just a way for us to learn a little bit more about you. It's a video that showcases a skill or a hobby outside of acting for you. So that could be singing, that could be poetry, that could be skateboarding or soccer, anything that you're interested in. It's just a way for us to get to know you better, and see what kind of things you like to do outside of just acting. So don't let that stress you out too much. You can have fun with it and be creative. And then lastly, for our music majors, no matter what major you're applying for, you are going to be submitting a pre-screen audition on your primary instrument or in your main vocal area. So just be sure that you have that submitted. And then if you are a composition major, you're also going to be required to submit your 3 to 5 notated scores, and recordings of those scores, of original scores that you've written. So keeping all those in mind, I know that was a lot of information. If anyone has questions about specific ones, we can get into that a little bit later. And also all this information you can find on our website as well if you want to see the specifics. All right, so deadlines. So the main deadline I want you all to remember is November 1st. That's obviously only a couple weeks away. This is our early action and early decision deadline. If anyone's unfamiliar, our early action is just applying early. It's non-binding. Early decision is a binding decision. So if you're accepted, then that means you're committed to attending that program. It's also November 1st is a priority deadline for our dance, screen acting, and theater performance majors. So what this means is that it's highly recommended you apply by that November 1st deadline, because these programs all require an audition, a live audition. It gives you a priority in signing up for those auditions and more audition availability to do. So super important you get everything in by that November 1st deadline. January 15th is our regular decision deadline. So if you do choose to apply regular decision, that's when you want to have everything in by. I know we may have some transfers in here. So February 15th is our fall transfer deadline. Most of our programs don't really accept spring transfers. But if you are interested in applying for the fall, the deadline for that is February 15th. One thing I do want to note is, because a lot of these programs do require auditions, if you are applying for one of those programs, try to get your things in a little bit earlier. So the fall transfer application opens November 15th. As close to there as you can, I would try to get things in so that you are able to attend one of those live auditions if you are invited, since they do take place only till about mid-February, which is when your deadline is. So if you are interested, try to apply a little bit earlier. If not, we can admit you based off your pre-screen video, but ideally we want to see you in one of those live auditions. And then an important thing to note is both the Common App and the Creative Supplement will need to be submitted by that date. So like I said, it can take up to 2 days for your Creative Supplement to be emailed to you. So make sure you give yourself a little bit of leeway. Always safe to give 5 days or so, just to be safe when you submit your Common App before that deadline, so that you have time to submit your Creative Supplement. Again, all of the exact information of what you need to do for your Creative Supplement is on our website. So if you want, you can look on the website and prepare everything before you have access to it. But otherwise, you'll have the access and have all that information once you get the email to submit your Creative Supplement. And then live auditions, like I said, are going to take place between November and February. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about live auditions now, expectations. So once you submit all of those materials, your Common App, your Creative, Supplement, and your media uploads, our faculty will review all of that and decide if they want to invite you for a live audition. Again, this is not for our BA Theater applicants, but for all of the rest of our applicants here, you will have a live audition if you are invited to do so. So if you are invited, you'll get an email that prompts you to register for one of our audition dates. We have both in-person and Zoom options. Our in-person ones are all taking place on Chapman's campus, and then we have Zoom options for our programs as well if you're not able to travel here. And then our theater program also has some regional auditions in Chicago and New York. So they line up with the unified auditions. If any of you are planning to attend those, we will have some faculty members present there so you can meet with them in person while you're there. So generally speaking, for all of these programs, the way that the auditions work is the beginning, you're going to start with an information session. It's going to be you, the faculty members, and usually some current students. It's a chance for you to learn a little bit more about the program, ask any questions you have. Generally speaking, parents are allowed to be present at this part as well, so that they can learn more about the program. After that, we usually go into some kind of group work. So our dancers do a warm-up class that's usually like 30 to 45 minutes. Often a ballet bar or something like that. This is just to get an experience in a class with one of our professors, and to also get warmed up for your solo audition. Our theater majors will do a short warm up as well, just to get them loose, get their voices ready to do their monologues. Again, get them ready for the audition and have a little bit of work with our faculty members. And then our music majors will get to meet individually with whatever programs that they are interested in and kind of learn a little bit more about those specific programs. And then after that, you're going to move into your individual audition. So again, it's pretty similar for all the programs. You'll get called individually to meet with the faculty and you'll present your material. It's usually the same material that you included in your pre-screen audition. For music, we have a few more requirements, so you could check those out, or if you're have questions about what exactly it is, feel free to reach out to us when that becomes relevant. But otherwise, you're going to be doing your dance solo or your monologues that you submitted in your pre-screen audition videos. And then once that's all done, your audition is done, you're free to go. And at that point, you'll be just waiting to hear from our faculty about your decision. One thing important to note is some of our talent areas are on kind of a different timeline than the rest of Chapman is. So even if you apply early, you may not be hearing a decision from us until January or so. It really depends on the program, and we like to kind of wait and see through auditions to see as many people as we can before shaping our classes. So just to keep in mind, and obviously also you cannot receive a decision until after you've completed your live audition. So if you apply by November 1st, you're totally free to sign up for one of those February auditions, but just know that you will not be able to receive a decision until after the fact. So that's basically it from me. I am going to now invite my colleague Carlos on camera so that we can start answering some of your questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm working. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so we do have some questions kind of saved up, kind of scroll to the top so that way we can get into that. So this first one is kind of looking at double majors when considering BFA programs. Would there likely be time to double major in BFA programs?
Good question. So it's really dependent on the student and the program. Again, for our dance majors, for instance, a lot of times we don't recommend you double majoring in BFA. That being said, we do have dance majors who do. So it's really up to you. If you come in with a lot of AP credits, for instance, that help knock out a lot of your GEs, that opens up a lot of flexibility in your schedule. If you're really diligent about, utilizing interterm, things like that, it can be possible. So similar with screen acting and theater performance and our Bachelor of Music degrees, it is possible, but you have to be really smart about your scheduling just because it requires so much rehearsal hours and extra class hours. So it's sort of dependent on each situation. You just want to work really closely with your advisor to see if it is possible for you, but we do have people who do it.
Absolutely. And I see there was a follow-up question in terms of that double major process, but asking about business specifically, kind of jumping off of what Morgan was saying, you really want to take a look at the credits that each major is worth. by the time you complete your degree at Chapman and your time in total, you would have completed 120 credits between screen acting and business. Those two programs alone get very close to that number, and you still have to consider the GEs that you're taking as well. So while Morgan, like Morgan said, it is possible, you do have to weigh your time out in terms of when you're taking those courses and how often you're taking them. If a student is already at Chapman, they are within one of the arts programs, switching into a different program, what does that process look like? Are students having to re-audition, the portfolio process?
Yes, so if you are switching into any of these programs, and similarly, if you're interested in minoring in any of these areas, there are still auditions for those. So even if there's a lot of times we encourage people not trying to take this like backdoor approach into going into one program and trying to switch into the other. You will still have to audition, and generally speaking, it's much more limited and usually not super common for students who are already Chapman students to then switch into another major. The main exception of this would be in our music majors. A lot of our music majors end up double majoring in two music areas like composition and performance or something like that. But other than that, it's a lot trickier to add a arts major once you're here. Our programs are pretty small and pretty competitive, so we don't usually see many students come in while they're already at Chapman.
And then we have a theater performance question. How much of the BFA in theater performance is based around musical theater?
Good question. So none of our program is inherently in musical theater. We're primarily acting based, but that being said, we do put on musicals throughout the year. We do offer voice lessons. If you're interested in pursuing musical theater, you can take private voice lessons through our music school, and then take part in those musical productions that our theater program puts on. Sorry. And then we also have a lot of musical theater clubs at Chapman as well. So if you're interested in being one of those, they put on a lot of productions. So you can still be really involved in musical theater in that way.
Absolutely. And I see there's a Common App question that I'll take. So the question is, if the Common App is submitted before November 1st, but teacher recs are not yet submitted, can the students still submit the content for their creative supplement? And the answer is yes. So once you submit your Common App, like Morgan had mentioned, within a day or two, you will receive access or receive an email from us stating that we've received your Common App. Please set up your status page. Once you have access to the status page, you can begin submitting those pieces to your creative supplement. As far as outside documents such as teacher recommendations, transcripts, school report forms, those can be submitted afterwards, but you can begin submitting your creative supplement materials once you gain access to your status page. Good question. And you kind of already mentioned this, Morgan, but as far as the opportunities for students to partake in theater productions, whether they are student-led or more program-led, for students outside of that vein, if they are not within the performing arts, not majoring, is it still possible for them to be a part of these productions?
Good question. So for theater specifically, it's usually pretty limited to our theater majors because we have a group of them and there's usually pretty limited performances throughout the year. There's limited casting. So we usually limit those to just our theater majors. However, again, there are a lot of clubs that you can do that put on huge productions every year or throughout the year at Chapman. So those are great opportunities if you're interested in performing still. You can always reach out to theater and see if you can get involved. But generally speaking, the acting roles themselves are pretty reserved for our theater majors.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into some creative supplement specific questions here. For the monologue auditions, are they back to back in one video or two separate videos? I think you did mention this, but feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, so ideally you can submit them in two separate videos and that way you can label them so we can see which is which. But if you do submit them as one video, we'll be able to still mark it and we'll know that it's there. So either way works, but ideally having them as separate videos. For our theater program, we also have an intro video that's a separate video. It's only a maximum of 30 seconds. It's really you just slating your name and the monologues that you're doing. So having that, the wild card, and then your two monologues, all separate videos is perfect for us.
This is a good question here. Student is asking about the BA in theater. With students who are emphasizing more of the directing approach with those productions, is there any collaboration with Dodge College that currently exists with those directing students?
Good question. So not exactly with directing the play. The main collaboration between theater and Dodge, there's a lot of collaboration between theater and Dodge, but primarily it's getting our theater students to act in a lot of Dodge films. That being said, there's a lot of opportunities for any students at Chapman to be involved on set in Dodge films if they're interested. So you can kind of get as involved as you want, but because there are so many directing emphasis majors in Dodge, that's usually kind of preserved for them when it comes to the filming, whereas our BA theater directing majors can direct our stage productions. But there's still a lot of ways that you can be involved in Dodge and in those student films, just not usually in the directing sense.
And then moving into the music realm, when it comes to the audition, is it possible to audition with a non-traditional instrument, such as for students that primarily create music on the computer, creating music that way? Are they able to audition in that manner, or does it have to be instrumental?
Good question. So we get a lot of people asking this. We are primarily focused on classical music. So all of our students are going to be taking piano lessons and are going to have to submit a audition video on their primary instrument. So if you are applying for, say, the music composition major, you can submit those more computer generated music, but you'll still need an audition video on a musical instrument area because you'll still be required to participate in some of our ensembles and things like that. So if you're primarily interested in that, you may be interested more in our music tech minor. So that's a good option if you're kind of interested in that side of it more, as opposed to majoring in classical music.
Can confirm the music technology minor is wonderful. I did that when I was a student at Chapman, so I can vouch for it.
Perfect.
So for the dance application, there's a question here asking for specific examples. What are some things that you've seen students submit in the past?
For the dance application, so usually people are submitting a solo. We want to see often, again, like balancing, technique, musicality, turns, lines, everything like that. So it's usually either a modern piece, a jazz piece, or a ballet piece. But we do see a lot of students who also will submit a tap solo, they'll submit ballroom dancing, anything like that. So that's a great way to kind of show if you are really interested in one of those areas. For instance, we have a huge tap program here at Chapman, and we love students who can get involved in that. So if we see that you're a tapper, that's really cool for us to know, but we still want to see that other area that shows it. We ideally prefer a studio filmed audition. So super simple, no edits or complicated costumes or anything like that, just us seeing you dance. You can submit a performance video if you'd like, as long as it's not too complicated in the editing or like zooming in and out. And again, as long as there's not distracting costumes, make sure it's a solo piece. We do have people sometimes submit group dances, and it's really confusing for our faculty to then kind of pick out who they're looking for. So as long as it's a solo piece and it's easy to see kind of all of those elements we're looking for, and it's an up-to-date version of your dancing, that's really what we're looking for.
Absolutely. See a question in here asking, do we require the CSS profile for financial aid? That's a great question. Chapman does not require the CSS. We just ask for the FAFSA to be filed. So no CSS, just FAFSA. So
I see.
Go ahead, Morgan.
I was going to say, I see here a question about if you're in screen acting, will you still have the opportunity to perform in theater productions and live theater? And the answer is yes. So all of our screen acting majors are still auditioning for our theater shows and still got a lot of stage acting experience on top of getting classes and working in student films and things like that for screen acting. So you get to do both.
Absolutely. It looks like we have a very animated question here. What is the length of the goal statement? What are some recommendations for it based off of your experience reading?
Yeah, good question. So our theater goal statement is 1,000-word limit. Our dance and music goal statement is a 500-word limit. So really kind of don't be too stressed about the length of it yourself. We really want to see in this, if people really want to come to Chapman, why we want to see that you've researched our program, and kind of why you think you'd be a good fit for this. So for instance, if you're applying for a dance major and you're talking about, wanting how you like that we have people from all different areas and you want to explore all these different things, and maybe you've seen one of our shows or seen a piece of ours online. We love to see stuff like that to know that you actually have done your research and really care about our program and are interested in being here and understand that you think this would be a good place for you to thrive. But similarly with all of our other programs too, it's just a place for you to kind of say what your goals are. Again, you're all only seniors in high school right now, so those can certainly change. But we love to see people who are ambitious and want to come here and kind of make the most of their Chapman experience, who have a lot of room to grow and learn from all of our faculty.
And then just a quick refresher, Morgan, what were the emphasis for the BA in theater?
Good question. So the BA in theater, you can do technical theater, theater education, dramaturgy and literature. That's one. And directing and performance. That's another one. So there's 4 total. And no matter what, you're going to take classes in all of those areas to start, and then you'll declare it a little bit later into your time at Chapman.
Absolutely. A couple more dance questions I see here. Oh, where did that one go? Oh, so a student had asked for the dance application based off of the 2 pre-screened auditions that they've submitted. When, if and when they are invited to the live audition, are they expected to perform those particular routines, or are they going to be coming up with a completely different one?
So generally speaking, there's not a hard set requirement of what you need to do, but generally speaking, we recommend you do the same piece from your audition video. That's what kind of caught our attention, and we can see your improvement from there. If you did submit 2 pieces, you would just want to pick one of them. But if you want to submit, or if you want to perform something new, you're totally free to. But it'll make it a little easier for you if you don't need to learn a whole new piece. And you won't be learning any new choreography or anything like that for us. It'll be submitting your own or performing your own solo that you've been practicing.
See, there's a question here about what is the most common second major for a music performance major. I'm not sure if that's being asked from the second choice perspective or just what are students interested in overall. Morgan, from your experience?
Yeah, a lot of our music students double major in business. A lot of them double major in one of the science areas. Again, that's sometimes just you need to be smart with balancing your rehearsal hours and your lab hours. But that's a super common one for us. And then we have a handful of music students as well, like I mentioned earlier, that do double major within music. So doing 2 different music majors, which you are able to do.
See, there's a question here about accelerated programs. So students who have the interest of pursuing further than their bachelor's, going into their master's. Do you have any information regarding the music education side for students wanting to get their master's as well as their bachelor's?
Yeah, so we work with our College of Education here at Chapman. And if you are interested in pursuing that master's degree, you can do a 4+1 program where once you complete your music education degree in those 4 years, then you're going to be taking classes that are really focused on teaching and gaining student teaching experience and things like that. And then after those 5 total years, you'll come out and have your music teaching certificate as well as your master's degree. So you can jump right into teaching from that point and be at the master's degree pay grade, which is great for everyone. So that's kind of how that works. If you're interested in learning more specific, I can connect you with the department directly and they can kind of tell you more about how that works.
Let's see.
I do see one question about music composition in the original scores. There's no required length for each. Obviously, we don't want it to be, 3 seconds long, so that's not going to tell us too much. But as long as it's enough that we can kind of get an idea of your work, that's good for us. And genres, it can be whatever you want. Again, you're going to have to submit a audition on an instrument in some way. So you're going to follow kind of more classical area for that. But when it comes to composition, it's really up to you to kind of showcase what you're most interested in. And they can definitely be very different. I know you asked if they could be cohesive or very different. You can have a lot of variety in those depending on what you're interested in and what you want to showcase.
Question here about dance majors being on the competitive dance team.
Yes, so our competitive dance team is open to any Chapman majors. It generally speaking ends up being mostly dance majors. So it's definitely possible for our dance majors to be part of that. Our dance team is a lot more kind of competitive jazz style. If any of you are competition dancers, it's a lot more similar to sort of that area growing up. And then they compete in competitions every year. I always forget the exact number because it's looping in my head, but they're like 14, 15-time national champions right now. So they're really, really great. Look them up on YouTube if you're interested. They're really amazing, but it's a lot more kind of like clean, synchronized, a lot of turns, leaps, jumps, things like that. And they usually do their practices in the evening, so it doesn't conflict with the other things in the dance department because they are mostly dance majors. So they're really able to work with that schedule.
For students in the performing arts, how does study abroad work for them? Are there specialized programs or are they able to do some of the semester abroad programs?
Yeah, so it's super dependent on the program. Our theater majors have a semester in London program that they do their second semester of their sophomore year. So that's kind of a structured program within Chapman that everyone will do. Aside from that, a lot of our students can opt for the travel courses and either do that over interterm, which is the 1 month term of January between our fall and spring semester, or over the summer. You can possibly do a semester abroad. It's kind of just dependent on what classes you have. For instance, if you're a BA dance major and you've completed most of your major coursework, you can kind of take those GEs and things like that in other areas. But for some of those, it's a little bit trickier to do a standard semester abroad. But there's a lot of other opportunities like travel courses, and we do sometimes have courses specifically in our majors. We've had our musicians go to Italy. We've had our dancers go to Israel. So there's a lot of different ways that you can still get that abroad experience, even if it's a little bit trickier to work out with your schedule.
There were a couple of questions about time limits for videos. So regarding the different VFA programs that will require that pre-screened audition, what are the time limits that the students are working with?
Yeah, so for our dance program, it's a 2-minute time limit. Again, if you want to do that as one video, or you could do two 1-minute videos, but keeping it to 2 minutes total. For our theater major, it's going to be 60 seconds per monologue. I know that's a little short, and so just trying to cut it down as best you can to get it down to that 60 seconds. And then for our music majors, there's not a set time limit, just getting whatever piece it is that you need to do in that video. Obviously within reason, ideally not uploading a 20-minute video because we have a lot of people to be looking through, but not a super hard limit for those.
We've talked about the theater performance students and them having opportunities to perform on stage. What are some of the opportunities looking like for screen acting students?
Yeah, so screen actors still are able to audition for all of the theater productions that are put on. So it's pretty similar between theater performance and screen acting. It just comes to when it comes to your classes, those will vary a little bit, but they still have the option to audition for all of the same theater productions. So yeah, they have a lot of chances to do that. And then similarly, both majors are collaborating with Dodge and getting to participate in student films and act and things like that. So you get kind of both no matter what major you're in. It's really when it comes to your classes that it's going to have the big differentiator between focus on stage versus screen.
Absolutely. There's a question in regarding choreography for our dance applicants. Do the routines have to be choreographed by the student or can they be choreographed by other individuals?
They can be choreographed by anyone. So it can be self-choreographed, it can be choreographed by a teacher at your studio or a teacher, an outside teacher, really whoever. As long as we see those pieces, we want to see the skill level that you have. So we don't care who choreographs it. Good question.
I see a question about internships as well as we could probably expand that into post-grad opportunities. What are some opportunities that the Chapman programs give to their students, as well as where have you been seeing students heading to as they've graduated?
Yeah, so we'll kind of go a lot of programs that, or a lot of organizations and companies that we partner really closely with are Segerstrom Center for the Arts. That's a huge arts organization that's just here in Orange County. They have a lot of great internship opportunities that our students go to. Center Theater Group in LA, a lot of our students who end up going into more an entertainment route intern at a lot of major movie companies and things like that up in LA. One of our full-time faculty members is Jenny Backhouse in our dance department. And she has a dance company called Backhouse Dance that's here in Orange County as well. So a lot of our students intern and then eventually will go to join that company as well. It's a contemporary company. So those are some examples of different intern opportunities. When it comes to professional, obviously we have students who are doing things all over the board. We have theater majors who are on Broadway. We have dance majors. We have 2 dance majors who are dancing with Taylor Swift right now, which is pretty cool. I always like to brag about that. We have music. A lot of our music majors go on to grad school and to get a master's in music or a PhD in music, and then perform or go on to teach or whatever it is that they decide to do. Yeah, we kind of have people doing everything. We do have a lot of people who are up in LA kind of doing gig work, both as like dancers and actors, and auditioning for things and kind of in that industry, and doing all kinds of things. So yeah, really all over the board, but our alumni are doing a lot of really cool things. So yeah.
Really?
I see one question about, for screen acting majors, are you allowed to work in the industry while in school? So it's kind of up to you and your schedule, but generally speaking, we don't recommend you try to focus too much on professional work while you're in school, just because you have a pretty packed schedule as it is with your classes and your rehearsal, and we want to have you make the most of your time at Chapman. But you're totally free to go up to LA and audition if you have the chance to do so, to gain that experience. And similar with our dance majors as well. You're always free to go kind of take classes in LA or audition in your free time. But we want your primary focus to be on your classes and your performances at Chapman, just because they're pretty busy as is. So we want to have, get the most out of your time here and your education while you can. And then you can dive head first in once you graduate.
I see a question of for students interested in vocal performance. Is there a specific style that the faculty would like to hear in their pre-screened auditions?
Yeah, so for vocal performance, you're going to be submitting two contrasting pieces. I believe one is in Italian. I might be wrong. You can find the specific things, and if you want, I can connect you directly with the program to kind of learn more about that. But it is more classical based, like I said. So not really looking for like pop singing or anything like that. More classical based singing work.
I see a question regarding merit scholarships, so I can take this one. So to merit, what is the minimum high school GPA? Do you also consider the music resume and the quality of the audition? That is a great question. So when we review students for merit scholarships, we're primarily looking at their academics, but looking at it with a much deeper lens. So looking at the student's overall trends, the level of rigor that the student has taken, and then obviously the performance itself. So it's very in-depth in how we review for those merit scholarships. And in some cases, especially with us being test optional now, we've taken a holistic approach with it as well. So looking at qualities in the student also throughout the application. So those are things that can influence the scholarship consideration for a student. So there isn't necessarily a GPA range that they're falling into in order to be considered for these. It's a variety of different factors that we're taking into account. That's a good question, though.
I see here a question about if there's an audition for the competition dance team. And short answer is yes, there is. You have to audition once it's a little bit into the school year. So similarly to any like club on campus that you're interested in, you can learn about it. And then it's probably like a couple weeks to a month into the school year, you can go and audition for that.
Let's see. Zoom keeps scrolling me back to the bottom. So there's a question in here. I'm not entirely sure if this is dance related. And Morgan, you might have to help me out with this pronunciation. Do we offer a point and pas de dos class? Did I say that correctly?
I think it's pas de dos. I might be wrong though. It's French, so that's good enough. But so we do offer point classes. We don't require point for our program, but in our ballet classes, you always have the option to do point. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of continue that if you are interested in pursuing point. And I don't know about the second part specifically, but again, if you are interested, I'd reach out to the program directly to hear more about the classes. But we do offer point, so you can still continue doing that throughout your whole time at Chapman.
I see a question in regarding first and second choice majors. So student mentioned that they are interested in music composition, as well as theater performance. Do I or can I apply for both in the Common App, or do I have to choose one? That's a great question. So you are able to put both of those programs, one as your first choice and the other as your second choice major. However, you will only be able to submit the creative supplement for your first choice major. So as we review you, we're only going to have those materials. In the event that either the faculty has reached out to you or our office has reached out to you for consideration of that second choice, it is then that you will submit a creative supplement for review for that specific major. So you will only be able to do one unless we approach you about submitting the second one. Great question.
And I see a similar question about doing BFA or BA in theater performance and a BA in dance. So yes, you can only apply to one officially and submit a creative supplement. Generally speaking, our BFA programs, so or not always BFA, but our dance program, our theater performance, and our screen acting program are some of our most competitive. Those ones are really challenging to add once you're already a student at Chapman. It's pretty rare that we do. So if you're interested in any of those, I would apply to them first so that you can join them when you're an incoming student. And then if you want to add a BA in theater, a music major, or any other major on campus, those ones are a little bit easier to add once you're already here. But dance, theater performance, and screen acting, it's pretty impossible to add once you're already at Chapman. So definitely apply for those ones first.
Morgan, based on your experience, what percent of music applicants, and I think we could talk about this for all the BFA programs, have taken classes specific to the major in high school? And how does that kind of affect the consideration?
I would say majority of our music applicants have, because it is very classical based, you're going to have to audition with those elements. So I would say if you don't have a ton of experience in one of those music areas, there's still a lot of opportunities for you to stay involved in music. One thing that's great about our music program here at Chapman is that you don't need to be a music major or even a minor to audition for one of the ensembles or take private lessons or anything like that. So if you're kind of more introductory in your experience level in one of those, I would maybe explore a minor or come in and just try auditioning for ensembles and taking private lessons. You're obviously always free to audition for our program, but there's a higher kind of level of expertise from people and what we require to see in the auditions.
I see. This is kind of a fun question. I'm curious to hear of your opinion. Speaking of the theater pre-screen auditions, what are some common monologues that you see from student applicants?
That's a great question. I'm not super familiar with the monologues that we do because I am not a theater major. So I know that there's some that are really probably common. I'm sure we get a lot from Romeo and Juliet or Hamlet or things like that. Advice I would have that I heard directly from our theater chair about choosing your monologues is choose something that isn't about the age range that you are. Make sure you really understand the character and whatever play it is that you're performing a piece from so that you have a full understanding. So know the whole story, know how to pronounce their name correctly, and make sure you're not doing something that's too crazy, and try to avoid doing anything with like accents or anything like that. We just want to kind of see you being yourself, but I mean, not being yourself, acting at it, but in kind of that main area. So yeah, choosing something that's more close to your age range and things like that is preferred.
I've also seen this question pop up a couple of times, but when looking at some of the different music programs, seeing as how some are much more performance based, whereas others may not be as much, do all music are all music program applicants required to submit pre-screened auditions, or are there select few where that is not the case?
Yes, all music programs are required to submit that pre-screen audition. So depending on the program, you may have to performance majors are going to have more requirements once they're at Chapman. But even our BA music majors still do submit a audition on whatever their primary instrument is, because they will still be participating in some ensembles and taking part in lessons and things like that. So everyone still will submit an audition video. Good question. I do see also if you're a vocal performance audition, do you need to accompany yourself with an instrument? We can provide an accompanist for you, or you don't need one, or you can have a track with you as well. So it's kind of up to you of what you want to do.
Kind of going back to the career side, we've talked about where students have gone, what internship opportunities they're taking advantage of. What are the actual resources as far as access to agents, preparation for auditions outside of Chapman? What does that look like for both our theater performance and screen acting students?
Great question. So in our senior year of our screen acting and theater performance majors, they take a class that's kind of all dedicated to preparing for the industry. And then the year wraps up with a senior showcase. So at the senior showcase, our theater performance majors are going to perform 2 monologues. Our screen acting majors are going to perform a monologue and then show a short clip of a monologue or of a acting piece that they've done. And this is a showcase that we do in LA. We bring agents and people from the industry there. And then afterwards, our students get to mix and mingle with them and make those connections. So you're really set up to not only have like a reel and a portfolio ready to go out and audition with, but you get to meet a lot of people then so that you can hopefully find representation really easily when it comes time to graduate.
Absolutely. Scroll back to the top. So as far as careers available, we've discussed the theater students, the screen acting students. As far as our music students, what are some popular careers that you're seeing students head into, whether it's the performance side or maybe the non-performance side?
Yeah, so like I said, a lot of our music students do pursue graduate education afterwards. That's a super common path directly after college. A lot of our students are performing in orchestras and symphonies around the US or around the world, honestly. But so that's kind of one path if you do want to perform. We have a lot of students who are also teaching music. So like I said, we have that music education major, a lot of them teaching K through 12. And then we also have a lot who are teaching more private lessons, who are teaching in college settings. A lot of our Chapman faculty, part-time faculty especially, are Chapman music alums. So a lot of them kind of stick around. Our career advisor currently with the College of Performing Arts is a music alum from Chapman. So a lot of people kind of going into more arts administration and things like that as well is another super popular path. I would say those are kind of the main things we end up seeing from our music students.
I have been seeing some questions about the competitiveness of the live auditions. So as far as your experience, students who have submitted applications overall, what is that conversion of students receiving the live audition, whether you have a specific number or not?
Yeah, so again, it's sort of program dependent and also dependent on the year. But we usually end up, I would say, roughly inviting 50% or so of our students to our live auditions. So give or take some depending on the program, but it's usually about half of those students who end up coming to a live audition. And then we see them, and then obviously depending on the program, how many we end up admitting.
So this one's going to be specific to music as well. What specific skills is Chapman looking for in a musical audition?
So music, I would say it's really dependent on, sorry, I keep saying this, but dependent on the program that you're auditioning for. We have really specific requirements for each instrument area or vocal area. Again, we're looking for more of a classical background. So we want to see that and kind of what experience and talent you have in that area. One thing to mention right now is that our music program does offer free lessons for all of our prospective students. So if you're interested in doing that, you can schedule a free lesson, either Zoom or in person, with one of our faculty members who's in that area. And this is a great time to kind of get to know our program, but also they can get you an idea of what to prepare for your audition. So highly recommend doing that if you are a music major and wanting to kind of learn more about the program and really prepare for your audition. Then you'll get some FaceTime with that faculty member as well.
As far as senior showcase, I know that it exists for many of these programs, but is there one specific to all of them, or how do I want to word this? It's said here, is there a senior showcase for dance majors? But I'm assuming that would extend into many of the other BFA programs.
Yeah, so our dance majors, like I said, we have a BA in dance, BFA in dance performance. The only performance that's limited to just BFA majors is our senior showcase. So the senior showcase is just solos of all of our BFA majors. They're often self choreographed, and that's kind of for them to put those on. That being said, we still do have a variety of other showcases throughout the year, including our final one is kind of the spring dance concert, and that will be BAs and BFAs. So that's kind of a way for them to put on pieces and things like that in groups, that you can kind of wrap up the year with, and we bring in a lot of people to come to. But then specifically, we have the senior showcase as well for our BFAs. That's a solo piece for each of them.
And then there, on the same vein of dance, what were some of the styles that you had mentioned that students can explore during their time in the program?
Good question. So we are primarily focused on ballet, modern, and jazz. So that's the ones, those are the classes you're going to be taking throughout your whole time there. But then on top of that, you'll have elective dance credits that you can fulfill with other styles. So you can take tap, like I said, you could take hip hop. We have ballroom, we have yoga for dancers. We recently started a reformer Pilates class in our training room, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of different ways you can fulfill it with that. On top of that, we have a lot of dance clubs. So we have 2 hip hop clubs, we have a tap club, we have a heels club if you're interested in kind of more like commercial heel style dancing. So there's a lot of different ways to explore a lot of different types of dance. And then with that, like I said, you can start choreographing your sophomore year. We have a lot of pieces that are student choreographed. So depending on those, you can get a lot really creative in what styles you want to showcase in shows, and be in. And they don't have to be limited to just those kind of main areas. They can be in any of those. So sometimes we have students put a hip hop piece on for our show, or something like that. So there's a lot of opportunities in a variety of styles. And then on top of that, we bring in master classes, and do workshops with a lot of groups. We brought in like Cirque du Soleil before, so it's obviously like its own unique style. So depending on who we're able to bring in that year, we always have at least, 2 or 3 groups come in. You'll get a lot of experience in other areas like that.
I think for our last question, because boy, it's 6:30 already. um, we could probably end it on a Disney note. Or is there one that you saw, Morgan, that you'd like to answer?
No, I just saw it really quick. I wanted to mention really quick that you can choreograph for those shows. Sorry, I realized this afterwards, but yeah, so like I said, you can start choreographing right away. So you have a lot of opportunities to choreograph. This is for dance majors, obviously. Either as a student or also take part in student choreography pieces. You can submit those proposals your sophomore year. But anyways, Carlos, what was it that you were saying?
So our final question for this evening. Speaking of Disney, the mouse is very close to us. It tends to be one of the highest employers of Chapman students in a variety of different departments that they have. Do you have any knowledge of what that process will look like for students that maybe want to become one of the Disney actors or be one of those cast members?
Yeah, definitely. So Disney hosts auditions all year long for people. We have a lot of dance majors who are dancing in the parades, a lot of theater majors, dance majors, anyone who are characters at Disneyland, and a lot of our musicians also are musicians at Chapman or at Disneyland. So we actually recently in our music den for all of our music students posted about Disney auditions because it is such a common thing for our students to do, and had some Disney representatives on campus. So there's a lot of different ways. We're super connected with them. We have a lot of students who work with them. So again, as long as you can schedule it, we have a lot of students who do it. So they're able to perform there in the park, whether it's playing instrument or singing or dancing or whatever it may be, on top of their work at Chapman, which is really cool. So if you're at Disneyland, maybe you'll see some Chapman students there.
Good. Alrighty, folks. Well, that looks like we're wrapped up for the evening. We do know that there are quite a few questions that we weren't able to get to today, but thank you so much for asking those questions. We really appreciate the engagement. We'll be following up with you all for the questions that went unanswered, so that way we can make sure we get those responses over to you all. But thank you all so much for a wonderful evening. Morgan, I'm not sure if you have any last remarks.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Thank you all for coming. We'll get all of your questions answered after this. And you're always feel free to reach out to myself or anyone else at Chapman if you do have any other questions after this. But Thank you all for being here and can't wait to see all of your applications come through this year.
Have a good night, everybody.